Thanks, Neil. Appreciate that. Tip for everybody, you should always write your own bio for these as well. I'm Joe from OO, the guy with the rhyming email address. This is Rowena, Strategy Manager for MTF Finance in Dunedin, responsible for delivering the strategy. She's very clear to me, she doesn't own the strategy, it's not hers. And you may have seen MTF, you may have seen the yellow buildings. There's one in Morehouse Ave, there's one in Hornby, there's one in somewhere out Papanui Way, somewhere, or you've seen the yellow utes driving around, or seen their advertising, or bought a car using MTF Finance. That is MTF. The F in MTF stands for finance, so technically, Motor Trade Finance is their name, but we downplay that when we go and visit them. So we've been working with MTF for 18, 24 months, and we feel like we've made a lot of progress. There's a good story to tell, some good lessons to learn, and we wanted to come and share that and talk about some of the surprising things that we've learnt. This is called the secrets to aligning your business. There's one real secret that is coming up in the end. That's the clickbait, right? So everybody stays till the end. And Rowena has graciously agreed to help share MTF's story with us.
Yeah, kia ora everyone. It's my pleasure to be here to talk to you a bit about our story over the last 2 years and partnering with OO on our agile transformation. So hopefully some of it resonates with you all today.
And so when we started this transformation, this agile transformation journey that MTF wanted to go down, there was always one question that we kept in the back of our mind. How might we take a 50-year-old successful, profitable company, disrupt it and make it relevant for the next 50 years? There's a couple of words that always stick out to me in there. Successful and profitable. This was a successful, profitable company that wanted to change. And quite often in the agile world, we are called in when there's a problem, when things aren't going well, when the damage has already been done. But here we were, a successful company that was already, from the outside, successful and profitable, asking us to help them change. And so the disrupt word is also interesting, a word that we hear a lot about, heard a lot about over the last 5 years, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And so what we found once we started working with MTF is they were a successful, profitable company. There was good people. It wasn't completely broken. But if we go back to 2018, where they were, it felt like they were, from the initial conversations we had, it felt like they were bogged down. They were struggling to move forward. They were getting projects done. They had big projects, but they were finding they hard to generate momentum, and the world around them was changing. So the market was changing. They weren't able to respond to the market needs, to their customer needs. And so from there, we had to work out what we were going to do. And so there was a bunch of challenges. Rowena, is there any more info on those challenges?
Yeah, thanks Joe. As Joe mentioned, MTF turned 50 in 2020, which was pretty exciting. And part of our success is that we have been around a long time and we've been a really profitable, strong organisation. But I guess the strength in that also risks being our weakness, because it could mean that we were going to be slow to adapt. As Joe mentioned, things were evolving pretty quickly. I don't think the pace of change in the next 50 years is going to be anything like it was in the past. So, we were beginning to see signs of this. We'd just completed a really large body of work to gain empathy for our customers and did a whole lot of customer research. And what we realised is there were heaps of opportunities to deliver better value to our customers. And this was pretty exciting for us. And at MTF, the staff are really enthusiastic about these opportunities, which means we're really good at starting stuff. Fantastic that we had so much going on. But what some of our challenges were was that we want to do everything. We had a lot going on, and we find it really hard to say no. So what this meant for our people is that they were really busy context switching all the time, trying to do their BAU job, be involved in projects. And there were a lot of big, long projects going on, and the goals weren't always really clear, and they kept shifting. So what we started to see was people were getting really exhausted and demotivated, and there was a real risk of disengagement from our people and the work they were doing and where the business was trying to go to achieve its strategic goals.
Sounds like more of a Dunedin problem, Rowena. It doesn't happen to people in Canterbury, right?
Well, that's good to know. Any Dunedin people here? Probably not. Oh, yay. Fantastic. So I guess this can be really damaging for your culture as well. So we were quite conscious of that in the leadership team. And as a business, our first instinct was, well, we need to do something about these projects. You know, they're not delivering our strategic goals. People are really busy working on them. So we thought we'd introduce a project management framework, because obviously our projects were the problem. But what we soon realised was, while we got some really useful tools out of a project management framework, it wasn't really dealing with our underlying issues. And so we were having some success with our development team in agile ways of working, and the lead there thought they'd come and discuss what it might look like for business agility. And there were some really key principles in there that really resonated with the leadership team and we thought could be of value. So we went out seeking pitches from some vendors, and of which Double O were one of the people to respond.
Yeah, so we were asked to pitch. We had a little bit of a relationship with MTF. We knew some of the people. We didn't know any of the exec. And so we had a look at their strategy. We had a look at their business. And this is kind of what we came up with. If you take the traditional view of Agile being about managing complexity, work is complex. Technical work is complex. Business is complex. People are complex. And the way we manage that complexity is by frequent delivery of things of value, as opposed to planning everything out to the nth degree, so that we make sure we're building the right thing. That's not what we pitched, though. That's a traditional view of Agile. And when we think about how it goes across the business, it needs to scale slightly differently. So we talk about scaling up the mindset, so that a focus on getting closer to the customer, an obsession on what the customer needs, what the customer wants, how do you service those customers, and placing small bets then into the marketplace, trying some things. And this was a concept which really resonated with the CEO in particular. Great, excellent, we're doing good. This is Kane and I down pitching in Dunedin, going well. And so we can get feedback on what's working. So you take those concepts, trying small things that the customer actually needs, so you can work out what's working, then you can decide whether you want to scale those up or scale those down. And so you might notice there's no plan here. We're not being prescriptive. These are the things that we're going to try. We talked about business agility, how to make your business more responsive without actually prescribing to MTF. This is what we're going to do. First month, second month, third month. We were just honest, I think. There's a good story about Kane and I, those of you who know Kane, sitting and having a coffee before the pitch, and Kane's a little bit nervous. And those of you who know Kane knows Kane doesn't get nervous, right? And I'm going, mate, whether we get this or not has already been decided. He's going, what? You mean it's rigged, like the US elections? No, I'm not. I didn't say that. I'd like that stricken from the record, please, Lisa. And so I said, all we can do is go be ourselves. Talk about what we know, be who we are, and they'll either like it or they won't. And, as it turned out, they liked it. Yeah. They liked us. Why did you choose us?
Yeah, well, as I said, we'd introduced a project management framework and realised that it wasn't addressing those underlying challenges. So we weren't really prepared to adopt the next methodology, the next framework. We needed something more than that. So of all the vendors we spoke to, Double O challenged what we thought about Agile, and they were really realistic and, as Joe said, really honest about what transformational change would mean for the business, how hard it would be. And what they really proposed to us was a partnership to co-design the way of working at MTF. So not a way of working, our way of working. And they talked a lot about the alignment of culture, strategy, and the activity or the work that you do to deliver value to your customers. And we really like this approach, so Joe's right, they got the job clearly.
We won, yay. Now we had the next problem. First problem when you win an engagement. What are we going to do? Where do we start with this thing? We knew we wanted to help transform the business, move them from being bogged down in the mud. And so where do we start? We did this. This is not the Simpsons episode where they come and get sold a monorail. This is just a town hall meeting. So we had a town hall meeting, literally in the Dunedin town hall, right? Well, we wanted to get some information about MTF. We wanted to start understanding who they were, who were the key players in the organisation, what was their culture like, what was their existing knowledge of Agile like. So we used this town hall session and did a range of things, but also started the education process, started building relationships. So it was kind of, we did nothing in particular. We just sat in a room and had a few laughs. It was I remember it being a fun day. doing exercises like this. Those of you who know us guys from Double O, this is kind of our post-it notes, whiteboards, that's our job. Using things like the modern agile framework, any agilists in the room might recognise that in the middle. So talking about things like experiment and learn rapidly, delivering value continuously, making safety a prerequisite, and then getting everyone in MTF, these 50 people that were odd people who are in the room, to articulate what they thought those things meant and what they thought was happening at MTF, whether they thought it was holding them back or driving them forward. And it just allowed us to build up a picture of who this business was. I remember having an agile Q&A session around the whiteboard where we were just able to get asked questions about agile. We've heard this, we've heard this. So just starting that relationship. And things like this were happening. We asked one question at one point, what are you working on? Tell us your projects. And this is what happened.
Yeah, so lots of post-it notes went up on the wall. And we knew we were busy, but when we actually all came together and wrote down what we were working on, what was coming up for us, this was all before Christmas, and I think this is like 3 months to go in the year, and this is all we thought we'd be working on. And as Joe will probably point out, so I'll do it before he does, there's things on there we're still talking about that we haven't started. So this was really revealing, especially having everyone in the room all at the same time, having the same realisation at the same time, and it sort of helped us understand that something did need to change and that buy-in started to happen. And I guess what's really important, it's something that Double O have been really good at teaching us, is about visualising the work. And that's something that we still do, and we've still got some more pictures to show you about how we visualise that work, those processes, to make it easy for people to understand, see where we're at and see where we have to go. So yeah, on this occasion it was really powerful, but also really overwhelming.
Yeah, I recognise some of these projects from things that are either finishing up now, 2 years later, or still being talked about as being good to do. So it's a really interesting time.
Yeah, and we're still transforming, that's why.
Yeah. And so what did we learn? What did Double O learn in that town hall session? Good people. People trying to do good work, good, solid, Dunedin people, right? That's how you might describe yourselves. There was confusion around the exec, who was on the exec team and who wasn't, there's a senior leadership team and exec team, and I remember that being one of the things we identified pretty early on. You need to sort out who's on your exec so people know who's in charge here, who's running the show. We got a sense that they weren't clear on why they were going agile. They kind of knew a little bit about this concept, so we wanted to drill down into that, especially with the exec. What do you understand about it? What do you know? And we also saw that they had a lot of projects, a lot of things on the go. Not unusual to go into organisations, right, and see that there's a lot of projects on the go. And so we'd done a little bit of discovery. We then kind of needed to baseline, benchmark where we were at. So we used the Business Agility Institute's Business Agility Radar as a baseline with the exec. We spent a day with the exec going through. They had to self-assess where they thought they were at with their business agility journey. Obviously just at the start, the scores were pretty low, but it was really, really revealing to us, and it helped them understand some things as well. But it gave us a way of knowing where we might start. I don't know, you were there, I was actually there that day, your recollections of that day.
Yeah, so it was revealing for all of us, Joe. It really helped us understand our starting point and provide us with a real area of focus, because as you see in the first workshop, everything was exploding. There was so much to undertake, and this sort of gave us some focus areas to start to plan for that transformation and know where we needed to get to as well. So this was pretty powerful and started to shape up the plan for the transformation.
And the other thing it did for us, the question there, so how do we know we're winning? It gave us a scorecard which we could come back to over the transformation to see if the things that we were, the initiatives that we were implementing were actually having an impact on agility across the business. So this is areas like customer seat at the table. Are you getting closer to your customers? Lean portfolio management. Are you managing all the initiatives? Do you have a way of managing that? Even knowledge of agile frameworks, technology ability, leadership and culture. So we're measuring a whole lot of things across the business. So really good to be able to come back to that. And this is something that the exec has come back to twice now and rescored.
Yep. So you see our scores are pretty low on this initial initial draft, but obviously that gave us heaps of room to improve. So yes, we've done it twice more and we've seen some significant improvement, but still identifying those areas where we need to keep focusing and working on. So it's been a really useful tool for us.
So far we've got some context about the business, we've done some discovery, and we've baselined some results that we can come back to. So two simple things, and then, so what? Always asking, so what? We then had to put together a roadmap, work out how we're going to get started with our transformation. This is the actual whiteboard session that Kane, Luke and I had around what we're going to do. And it looks a mess, but it's not. And so some things come out in here. We knew we needed to work with the MTF leadership team. We knew we needed to do some work with the exec and start working with them in particular. We kind of had a feeling we wanted to launch a pilot team, start small, make safety a prerequisite, small bets. So we wanted a pilot team to start with this agile way of working. We didn't quite know what that pilot team was focused on yet. That was the decision that we would come to with MTF. And inside this transformation, we knew we needed to take the rest of the business on a journey as well. So while we were setting this pilot group underway, we needed to keep communicating and starting planting seeds with the rest of the organisation about what we were going to do. A couple of other things that come out in there, we had to set up an agile change team. ACT is that group, a team, representatives from OO and from MTF who were responsible for managing the change. What are we going to do next? Looking at the results. And we also set up a prioritisation framework team, or PIFT as it got called, which was responsible for managing the prioritisation of work in between while the transition was going on. As we saw, a whole lot of projects. How do we manage all of those projects, bring new projects on board? We weren't going to bring any new projects on board, were we? No, there's already enough going on. But deciding what to do, what not to do in the interim. And so I mentioned there we were going to kick off the exec, work with the exec, and we kind of decided that it would be good if the exec went first, and I think the exec agreed, correct?
Yes, yep. So if we were going to convince the rest of the business to go agile, we had to demonstrate that. That was really important, part of leading the change. And the first thing was about, as Joe said, we had to really understand why we were doing this, because we had to communicate the why to the business. There was a lot of anxiety in our business because, we were changing the habits of a lifetime, and what did this mean for them? What were these agile teams? Did that mean they, jobs would change? So there was a lot of stuff going on. So it was really important the exec were really aligned on that vision for the change, and communicating regularly with the business, and also being really honest about what we didn't know, because we didn't have all the answers. We were figuring this out as we went, but we were figuring it out by doing it ourselves and trying to work in an agile way, so we could demonstrate that to the rest of the business, but also learn and buy in and translate that to everyone else. So that was really important, and I think if you can flip the exec team of a business who probably have some of the most, the strongest habits of a lifetime, longevity in that exec team. I think if OO could do that, it sort of bode well for the rest of the business to be able to go agile.
It's hard though. It's hard
Sure
changing execs. Ingrained behaviours, they want to change, but they don't necessarily want to change their own behaviours. I'm not talking about you, Rowena. Sometimes they're looking out across the rest of the business and going, everyone else needs to change, we're all right. So it was hard. But it was really good. It meant that they could understand conceptually agile, but also feel it, see what it feels like. It meant that we could answer the question of, do they understand what agile means? And there was some good, interesting sessions I'll come to in a second. There was what did we do? We set up a Scrum-like process. Those of you who are familiar with Scrum, execs are different. They're wearing several hats. That's one of the things you've got to manage. You've got to work out whether this is your first team, or whether your first team is your reporting line, whether it be marketing or strategy or finance. And everyone's busy. The exec seems to deal with a whole lot of stuff which needs to happen right now. So it was hard. It took
really
a long
hard.
time.
Yeah.
And part of my role in working with the exec was to hold them to account. I remember the very first meeting we had where I was doing what I do, talking about agile stuff. And then I said, right, we need to have a break, 5-minute break. We'll come back in 5 minutes. 17 minutes later, everyone wanders back in the room, and I'm going, that's the longest 5 minutes I've ever had in my life. And I remember you, in particular, Rowena, looking squeamish, right? My reputation down there is I have a nice way of making people feel uncomfortable. But you needed someone like that to hold them to account. We're biased, but people from outside the organisation are helpful in that sense. They can hold you to account. They can call out the bullshit. And so we worked with the exec, and through working with the exec, we were still heading towards what is the model? What is the model for this transformation? It's unique to MTF. It's different from what happened at Spark. It's different from the Spotify model. That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to take anyone else's model and put it on top. So we took the roadmap, and then we worked through some discussions about the organisation. What are we learning? How are we doing? What else do we know? And I remember coming into Dunedin one day. We'd been back in the office, the OO, and talking about how we might structure this, and coming in and explaining this model. It doesn't make any sense when you look at it like this. But a lot of this stuff that's in here is language which has now turned into common language at MTF. OKRs, needles, what needles are we trying to move? The importance of strategy is in here. And there's some measurement, how we're going to measure that goal, those goals, and also some concept of value streams are coming through quite clearly. And so we ended up with this. The model got tidied up by somebody at MTF. You probably worked out. I don't really do tidy drawings. Everything's messy. But we've got these value streams coming through based on strategic pillars, things that are useful to the organisation, important to the organisation. Engage. How do you engage people at the start of that journey if they're wanting a loan? Join. How do you make it frictionless or remove some of the friction from signing up for a loan? Nurture. How do you help some of the franchise or originator, as they call them? And excellence. How do you improve the way of working within the organisation? And then all linked up to strategy. I don't know whether you wanted to say anything about the importance of that.
Yeah, it was really important because we needed this. We were focusing on the business and how we could deliver strategic outcomes, but equally we needed the board to understand that. And you can see in this diagram there's an empowerment framework. So that was about the safety for our people and experimenting and trying stuff to achieve those goals. But it was also on the flip side demonstrating to the board that there were guardrails in place. We weren't just letting people go off and innovate and experiment with limitless budgets and time. So this, I guess, again, another really important visual communication piece, taking all that work we'd done on what it could look like and coming up with this concept. And this is how we describe how we execute strategy in our business now.
So we'd gone through discovery, we baselined some stuff. We now had a model that we could impose. I don't know whether impose is the right word. We could implement in the business. And so we now, as I mentioned earlier, we wanted to start with a pilot team. We wanted to start small bets concept again, although it's on the largest side of a small bet. We wanted to set up with a team for 3 months, get them into this agile way of working and see what we learned. Because what we learnt will be important when we start to roll this out wider, assuming it's successful. So we set up a pilot team in the engage part of the business. These are how do you attract people who are looking for a loan? How do you generate leads? How do you rank the quality of those leads? We set up some objectives and key results, some things we wanted them to achieve and some ways we were going to measure. So hopefully measurement is coming through loud and clear. That's really important. Asked for expressions of interest. Who wants to be part of this? And I think the response was pretty good.
It was overwhelming, yeah.
And then from OO's perspective, we flew to Dunedin, did a 2-day boot camp. And that's not just teaching Agile, it's helping set up the team. What's the purpose of the team? What's the behavioural expectations of the team? And then we were around to support the team getting up and running and working with them over a period of 3 months and helping them understand Agile, but also observing and seeing what we need to learn, which we can apply to the wider model. And so, yes, great, pilot was successful. And so the conversation was about rolling it out to 4 new teams. Aligned around strategy, so they had these strategic pillars. There'd been a lot of work that Rowena and her team had done around strategy. Membership had been selected. We'd started some additional role training product owners, training scrum masters or team facilitators as they were called, working with the team leads, setting up, planning how we're going to be in Dunedin. We had these planned for Easter of this year, and then something happened. What happened in March? So at that point, we're going, what do we do? We don't know. What happened?
Yeah, so I guess if we wind back a little bit, we'd developed this strategy now that our people could understand, and the board approved those objectives and would break them down for the business so they could plan, sort of do quarterly planning to determine what those goals would look like in alignment with that strategy. And staff seemed really excited. As we mentioned, we had an awesome response to our pitches. So lots of people wanted to be involved in the agile way of working and in our agile teams. And our pilot team were learning some really great stuff. So we felt ready to flip the rest of the business. But as Joe's pointed out, you know, COVID happened and massive impact on the business. So we're sitting there all working from home, having to, in my role, having to rethink the strategy and based on this new and really uncertain environment. And we also had to now consider what this meant for the business and the agile teams. We were the one we had in place who were focused on customers signing up loans, and we weren't sure what was even going to happen in that space now, but also for the rest of the business when hardly anyone was in the office, so it was a really challenging time. But then we soon realised that this way of working, our agile transformation, was made for this. This was how we responded to, you know, massive changes in our circumstances. So we, as a business, we made the decision to actually keep going and flip those 3 more agile teams. So at this stage, we still just had that one pilot team, and we decided to implement 3 more and put us in the best possible position to react to COVID and support our originators, the people writing loans, and give them the tools they need to do digital onboarding with customers, but also to support our customers who were ringing us up and we had hardships to deal with and putting loans on hold as people were really uncertain about their ability to pay. So, and that was actually really successful. So in the past, we would have really struggled with this level of change and we wouldn't have been so responsive. It was a really difficult time for the business, as many of you all know, but our way of working was really starting to pay dividends for us in terms of our response to that.
That's great. For us, we spent a couple of weeks wondering whether we still had a business, what was going to happen. While MTF were still working out what they were going to do and other clients were working out what they were going to do, we knew they couldn't write a loan. We knew there'd been some talk about digital onboarding, and then the message came back to us, as Rowena's saying, we're doing the right things, let's keep going. This is good. And so we ended up doing 3 virtual boot camps with those teams and taking more an active role in supporting those teams as they went through this transformation. So we've spent the last 6 months sitting at home, sitting in front of a screen. Mrs. Zoom is constantly on in my place, and it just felt like it was working. We were getting this thing. We were using everything we'd learnt, and so rolling out this agility across the business. And so now we had this. A strategy, new engagement with the strategy, alignment with the strategy, objectives, key results, and teams that were working underneath. So how did that feel from your perspective?
Yeah, so this is how this felt, was that people were really willing to engage still with our strategy, even though we'd sort of ripped the carpet out under their feet and changed it quite dramatically. The way we have cross-functional teams now working on these strategic outcomes and goals means there's lots of collaboration across the business. So even though we weren't all in the office, everyone knew what was going on. There was lots of transparency, lots of collaboration and communication, even if it was via Zoom. So this helped us just carry on working and continue on our path to deliver those outcomes to the business. So from that point of view, it was really good.
And then I would hear these things. There's some side conversations with me. There's people who've been there 6-10 years who are saying, for the first time, we have these strategic presentations. With all due respect, Rowena, they have these strategic presentations every year, and they go, okay, well that's good, that all sounds good, but how does it affect me? And they've now saying for the first time when we have these strategy sessions, I can see how I can impact, my work could impact that strategy. I can help the company deliver on that strategy. So really important to get that alignment, I think, and that's one of the things that we'll come back to. And so now we're in a quarterly planning cycle where there's quarterly updates to the strategy, there's quarterly objectives and key results, things we're chasing and ways that we're going to measure those things, and we get together for a couple of days and do a planning session, each team. can lay out what their plan is for the next quarter, for the next 12 weeks. Without getting into too much detail, we're still existing in a complex, agile world where things will change. It's really helpful to have a high-level plan. And teams can work out what their dependencies are, what's their reliance on each other, what's their reliance on other parts of the business, and work through that. And really valuable, I think, to be able to give the team that opportunity to have the exec available and able to answer questions. I remember you were around for IT enablement, working closely with them, and that was really helpful. And so we did a session in June. That was the first quarterly planning. Did another one in October. And what difference have you seen?
Yeah, so from that first quarterly planning session to the one in October that we've just had, I guess people were a lot more comfortable about the process. We were more prepared. We learned a lot from that first session, so we made sure that people came prepared to have the right conversations in the room, understand the dependencies, be prepared to negotiate on some of those more challenging things, because we do only have finite resource, so that has been one of our business challenges, is to spread the skill sets across our agile teams and deliver what we need to. So an opportunity to come together, talk about that, and also importantly sort of review how we have been doing and what we can learn from what hasn't been working so well. So I think that's just as important as it is to look forward and plan for the next quarter, is to actually pause and understand how the past quarter went and what worked well, what didn't, what do we need to change. So really powerful having everyone in the room for those conversations and the business sort of stopping to do that. In the past that would have happened in lots of little meetings and things would have got missed. Everyone together discussing outcomes and the way forward has been really powerful.
And so there's some good things I hear in there. There's a transformational journey going on now. I remember when we did those original sessions explaining how quarterly planning is going to work and the big room planning, this is what's going to happen. I remember we're always saying, think about, it's confusing now, think about how different it's going to be in 3 months. And now we're talking about how different it's going to be and we're doing the next one in January. The changes. So you're on a transformation journey, right? And it's going to keep evolving, keep changing. Remember, no prescriptive plan. So we've gone from learning a little bit about the context to implementing agility across the business. They've now got an operating rhythm, an organisational operating rhythm, as well as the teams working in 2-week cycles. The organisation is now working 12-week cycles. So it's really helpful. And so it all filters up, all those scores filter up to what is now your strategic scorecard? Yeah,
so this is our scorecard, and I call it a scorecard because I don't know if many people involved in sport. I love sport and I'm really competitive, and I try to, we had a good example early on in this journey where we talked about a basketball game, but we're just saying how hard would you play and how motivated would you be if you didn't know if you were winning or losing and no one was keeping track of the score. So keeping score is really important, and Joe's touched on OKRs. It's measuring as much as you can, measuring everything to see how you're actually doing, and this is really important for accountability as well. So, and this is actually what engages people as well. They need to see they're making progress, or if they're not, we need to pause and have a conversation and understand what needs to change. So again, these metrics create really good discussion amongst the teams, so really, really powerful.
And this is your actual scorecard with you show the board, right?
Yep.
So we're not looking too closely at the numbers, right? Don't leave the room, the numbers. But it's really valuable, really helpful. So we've gone from having an organisation which had a whole lot of projects, not unusual, a lot of organisations we walk into have a whole lot of projects, to an organisation who was now focused on strategic things that were important and having those aligned to the teams.
Yeah, and not just the teams too. This is what gets reported to our board, this scorecard. So it's important that they understand that they're getting real value out of this agile transformation, and that our people are actually delivering value. So it's a way that they can hold us to account as well. So again, a really important tool for connecting that sort of governance board level down to our people in the way who are working on the stuff in the business.
So what have you got now? That's kind of it, right? Strategy that everyone understands.
Yep.
So how was your strategy previous? How did that work?
Yeah, so in the past, our strategy was sort of an interaction between the exec team and the board. So it was really important that the board were comfortable with the strategic direction of the business, and there was a real disconnect between those strategic goals of the business and the work the people were doing, which is why we had so much going on, so many projects. Goals were unclear because we never took the time to articulate those really high-level strategic objectives of the business that were in the strategic plan. And break that down into ways that people would understand what they needed to do and work on in terms of achieving those goals. And that's been really motivating for our people, because they can, when we have scores and measures and we're measuring everything, they can see what they're doing, in their I guess, smaller initiatives are actually feeding up and having an impact on the strategic direction of the business. So really, really powerful. And also, I guess, incorporating that customer feedback in that as well. So whenever sort of wondering what to do next, we're always talking to our customers, and that shapes up some of what that work looks like in our agile teams as well.
So you're set up to respond for the next 50 years, right? So what? So we've gone through a whole lot of stuff. This is our Steve Jobs one more thing moment, right? What have we actually learned? What do we learn, which is really surprising? And we've gone through a whole lot of stuff. We've now got a way of working. I asked Rowena a question. This is going back, must have been August, when we were first originally preparing for a September Tech Summit. If we go back to when we first did the pitch, what did you think was important that turned out wasn't important?
Yeah, so we talked a lot about the culture we'd need to undergo this transformation, and then we found we got quite involved in what the work would look like, and invested a lot of time and energy in the work and the processes to achieve really effective strategic execution. But what we've found in focusing on our work and empowering our people, we're starting to see really significant culture change. So I think we sometimes forget that people come to work to add value and contribute, and that really speaks to your culture, and especially when you're building that work around the customer. And what we've seen is that's what really engages people, motivates them, feel good about coming to work, and has such an impact on your culture. It's that's been the big transformation, I think, and it's not what we probably anticipated when we started out, but it's certainly been a really wonderful outcome of this partnership.
So let me be clear on what I think I'm hearing there. We get asked to come into a whole lot of organisations and fix this, and there's this organisational friction which stops this from getting any faster. And so what we've done at MTF is fix the organisational friction, so you've got an alignment between the strategy, you've got measurement, and the work that the teams are expected to do. You've got autonomy. And we go into a whole lot of organisations and get asked to make this faster. I'm about to swear, I think. Fucking fix this. Fix this organisational friction. That's what we've done. And in doing that, it has improved engagement, motivation, and culture. That is fascinating to me. Those two things are intrinsically linked. The way that you work and removing that friction is the same thing as your culture. That is your culture, and we get asked to try and work around all this friction. And now at Double O, we're coming in and coming head on at that friction and going, that's what you need to fix. And if you fix that, you will solve a lot of your other problems. That is fascinating to me. And so to answer the question we started with, how would you transform, disrupt a successful, profitable company? We've kind of come up with the answer. Focus on the way of working, get alignment around the strategy, get alignment around the things that are important for the organisation. Set some measurement, set some needles that you want to move, and get out of the way. You mentioned the exec getting in the details. You don't get into the details anymore. Teams have autonomy to decide what work they were going to do to move those needles. The exec's still very heavily involved in defining those objectives and key results. But that, I believe, is what's leading to cultural and engagement change at MTF, and is setting them up for the next 50 years. Thanks very much. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Rowena, also, for being quite open in terms of presenting her story.